Did you know that the most effective way to combat climate change is not cutting emissions on all sectors or change our energy systems? The most effective way to work for the better climate is to change the way we are growing our food. Hi, I'm Markku Wilenius, the traveling futurist. Now, our food system here on Earth is a giant business, worth of at least 5 trillion. It represents 10% of the global output, and 65% of the people in developing countries still derive their income from agriculture. So it has a massive impact as a whole to how the world really works. Currently, climate change puts a huge pressure on human civilization. Our weather patterns are changing quite dramatically. More droughts, more extreme weathers, more oscillations of the weather, more dynamic in general. Now think about this. When we want to stabilize something, we need to think what is the best way to intervene into the system. And as I said, the most important sector that we can work on this, stabilizing our climate, comes from the food. Why is this so? The first reason is that the soil, the humus layer on our Earth, is the most important deposit for carbon after the oceans, which you see here. That is quite remarkable thing, because the soil captures the carbon and it releases it under certain conditions. Now, with the practices that the modern agriculture has built, a huge amount of carbon has been released from this top layer. And that has meant that a lot of that carbon is now in the air, in the atmosphere, where it should not be. And consequently, our soils are becoming much more poorer. They don't have not only carbon there, but also the microbes, the enzymes, the whole biosystem that the soil contains. It has been heavily reduced by using fertilizers, by heavy tilling, by other modern agricultural practices. Now, the food that we buy from the stores is of course the result of how the farmers are dealing with their land. So the source of what is contained in our food is actually the practices of the farmers. So we are actually very much dependent on the farmers in the quality of our food. Farmers, on the other hand, are hugely dependent on their land. Everything depends on how well the land functions. Of course, they are also heavily dependent on climate conditions. And what has happened during the last years is that those conditions that farmers are depending on have become worse. And so there is a direct impact on the changing climate and the conditions for the farmers. Now, at the same time, the farming, as I said earlier, is the core solution. Because if we change our way we cultivate our land and we start to focus on more how we can actually tie the carbon in, and also how to make our soil richer, by having more microbes there, more enzymes and other useful ingredients, we could turn around this development that has been there now ever since we started to use what was first called the Green Revolution, modern agricultural practices, without considering this fact that it actually contributes to the climate change. Then, of course, we need to add another piece to this picture. Think about the grazing land. Think about the cattle. Well, the simple fact is that raising the cattle on average takes as much as 36 times more resources from the land if you compare that with growing some plant protein, such as peas. So there is a huge difference there. And for the sake of global efficiency, we should actually turn from raising these cattle, which also then later form a big part of our diet, into something more useful and something where we are actually cultivating our land in such a way that it can become much more sustainable in itself. Because what happens today is that as the land is becoming poorer, there have been some calculations according to FAO, the World Agricultural Organization, that it takes something like a 60 harvests until in many parts of the world we are in the situation where actually all the nutrients from this topsoil are more or less gone. So we need to change from meat to the plant protein. That's one thing, but that's not enough. Then we need to also to find new ways actually how can we improve our food production systems in urban areas, because urban areas have become those areas that where most of the people live in this world. So we should also think of how bringing that food production near. So that's why the last 10 years we have seen sprouting in different parts of the world this idea of how to build different vertical gardens, how to bring the gardens into the city which actually grow food. And I'm sure that this is something that gonna change a lot the way we need to think about the food systems in terms of our production in urban areas. We have a lot of experiments from Italy to Singapore that shows that it actually works. So we have these different elements that are bringing about the change in our food system. So we need a new diet for the world. We need a new diet that is based more on the plant protein, as the effect to the climate is so much less. It's actually calculated to be 6 times more when you are growing animal protein. So that is the one thing. And then the second thing is that, well, we need to unite the forces behind the food system to help them to recover from this madness where we are actually using our natural resources in a completely devastating way. And this means that all these subsidies that have been built around the agriculture, which is huge, only in Europe, something like 40% of the European Union budget goes to the agricultural subsidies. So it is a big, big part here and in many other parts of the world as well. So we need to build the type of the food system and a type of the ideal diet for the human beings, which actually supports the climate, because if we destroy the climate, there is nothing left here on Earth to live for. Because all those extreme conditions, all that we know about the decades of climate change research shows clearly that if we continue this path, we're gonna end up not just in a big trouble, but we are probably gonna end up as civilization. And as I said, the food system is the most important arm for fighting against this climate change. To make the necessary change in our societies, in the way we run our food systems, in the way we are running our economies. So we definitely should not neglect that possibility, because it is not only about healing the climate, it's also healing society and the economy. And in the end of that road, we would have much happier farmers who can sustain themselves and who are happy that they have been a part of solution, a most important part of the solution to deal and overcome the challenge with climate change. So, summarizing, food system is the most important asset that we have to fight against climate change. That change requires we change our diet, as we said, change our agricultural practices. Be a part of that. Subscribe to my channel, check related videos, and give your feedback.